Welcome back to another episode of Foodie Friday with Amy. I am here today to show you how to use one of the seasoning blends that I shared with you last week. So if you remember, we made our kind of our fall like warming spice blend combination of nutmeg, cinnamon, ginger, and cardamom. And so I have that here. You can check back on our the Foodie Friday video from last week if you didn't catch that recipe. And I'm going to show you how to make some homemade applesauce. So again, a lot of these videos, I'm kind of in the kitchen and already doing stuff and realizing like, hey, you guys might be interested in learning about this too. So one of my favorite things, if you've seen on our Instagram story, I love doing some warm like fruit. So whether that be kind of like boiled down into like a compote, or sometimes I make homemade applesauce, which I'm going to show you how to do today. And I'll combine that into my oatmeal. You guys know that I love oatmeal. And then I'll put that on pancakes, just eat it plain, like whatever the case may be. I have a ton of apples that are kind of on the verge of like being a little bit almost too ripe for me. I definitely like when they're still really crisp, and these ones are getting a little bit softer. I actually also have a pear that I'm going to use as well with this. You can do a combination of apples. You can add in the pear. You can, kind of mix and match whatever flavors you like. I do sometimes like to do a combination of some sweeter and some tart apples. So get creative, have fun with it. This is super duper simple, you guys. I use the crock pot like I do for a lot of things. So I'm going to just get to chopping. So I have right now, and I'm using, like I said, a combination of fruit. So I have a pear, I have 2 small Gala apples, and then I have 2 little bit larger Fuji apples. So I'm going to do a combination of all these things, and you're going to want to chop them into like bite-sized pieces. They're going to, or maybe a little bit larger actually than bite-sized pieces, because as they cook down, they're going to get soggy and they're going to kind of melt. And it really depends on, like, I love to have little chunks of apples in my applesauce because I think it's delicious. Some people might want something that's a little bit more pureed. So you can do one of 2 things. You can chop your pieces into a little bit smaller ones, so then they kind of disintegrate down. And once it's cooked, then you can actually mash it up a little bit more. Or you can also blend it if you really want to go that far and make it a super pureed applesauce. If moms out there are making it for your kiddos and they don't really like having the big pieces in there, which I totally can understand, then maybe you want to be more about blending. Like my pieces here are pretty large. This is my pear that I'm chopping up, because what I like to do is at the end I will kind of maybe like mash it around a little bit once it's all done and cooked, but generally I kind of just let the big chunks go, and then whatever else has kind of like fallen off of the pieces, that's kind of like how I just like to keep it. So if that makes sense. I know that kind of was like weird wording there. I'm just kind of blabbering on here as I'm chopping. And if you have like an apple slicer, that obviously would make your life way easier. I don't have one of those, so I'm just going the old-fashioned route, chopping all of these up. And so the other great thing about this is, we're coming onto the tail end of apple season, pears, and so all of those fall fruits, which means that you can still get them relatively like local here if you live in Portland, depending on where you're at. And so I love trying to cook and utilize the seasonal and local produce as much as possible. I encourage a lot of my clients to do that as well. You definitely get more nutritional benefits when you're getting that local and fresh produce. So I'm just gonna finish chopping these up here, and all this is just going directly into the crock pot. And I just dropped an apple on the floor, and Allie, who you can kind of see her tail wagging over in the corner there, just went and swooped that up. She's a healthy dog. She likes to eat apples and cucumbers and peanut butter because she's obsessed with that, kind of like I am. So she's happy when I drop things like that. So I'm still just chopping away here. I'm going to get this last apple in the crock pot. And then the great thing is that from there, you basically don't do any work. So I'm trying to keep your life simple with these recipes that I'm giving you, not making them too complicated just because I know life is busy and food prepping and all that kind of stuff can be overwhelming. And there's just no need to like necessarily make things harder unless you really love being in the kitchen. Then in that case, by all means, get your chef hat on and like do all the things. But all of these recipes that I am liking to provide for you guys are just things that are super simple. So I'm going to show you. This is my crock pot filled with all of my fruit that I just chopped up. I'm going to go ahead and put that in my crock pot, and then I'm going to set that on the low setting. I have, this is, again, I don't measure things very well, but I would say this is close to maybe like 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of water. And I'm going to put that in the bottom of my crock pot. Realistically, you don't want it to come up over the top of the apples. That's going to be way too much water. You want just a little bit on the bottom so that it doesn't stick and burn. All right. So just putting enough in. The apples often have enough moisture, and especially that pear, because it was really ripe, to kind of like the juices from that will come and make that, you know, all really, really like delicious. So I don't get all the sweetness from that. I'm going to use a teaspoon of the seasoning blend that we talked about last week. Again, check out my previous video for that. I am just going to put that over the top of all the apples. I'm going to use my hands, and I am literally just tossing that seasoning blend all over the apples. You can add something like, you wanted to get fancy with it, you can add like raisins in here if you like that. You know, you can do, I'm trying to think what else you can add, but realistically, this is just amazing. So I'm going to put my lid on. Here we go. It's on low. I will let this cook for anywhere from about 3 to 5 hours. I kind of keep an eye on it. It really depends on how firm the apples were before you started cooking them. And then you'll just kind of check on it if you want to mash it up a little bit more, or if you like the chunks like I do, you could just leave it. It's delicious. It's amazing. And you can do all sorts of stuff with it. So hopefully that inspired you to do something new this weekend. Have a wonderful Friday today and enjoy your weekend. Share with me if you ended up making this and what you thought.